Okay, it's recording, so if you don't mind, doing the date, time, and stating for the record who you have for a quorum and all that, all right? And then I'm gonna jump out, and if you need me, call me again.
Sure, will do. Thank you so much, Jeremy.
All right, good luck, bye.
Thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to welcome you to our Community Development and Budget Priority Committee meeting. Today is May 27th, 2026. The time now is 7 p.m. Welcome. My name is Dwayne Williams, and to my right, I have
Mayra Núñez.
and we do have a co-chair online. Stacy, could you introduce yourself?
Stacy and Delian, Chair.
As such, we do have a quorum in order to have today's meeting. I would normally read the conduct statement, but in anticipation of today's packed agenda, we're going to forego that, and I'm going to request that you take a look at the conduct statement independently. Next agenda item and review of meeting minutes. I'll give you a summary in lieu of going through the meeting minutes. Last month we went through our fiscal year 2027 preliminary budget registry with the folks who were in attendance with us. We had a lively discussion and an amazing meeting. All right, so that was in summary of what took place. We did have everyone in attendance for a quorum. So the next item on the list, I do have and would love to welcome Mr. Nick Stamper from New York Department of City Planning, in particular the Community Development Overview. And so, Nick, if you're online and you can hear me, please unmute, welcome yourself, and introduce anyone that you may have online with you today.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Good evening, everybody. My name is Nick Stampar. I'm a senior program manager with the Capital Planning and Support team at the Department of City Planning. Just me tonight. You've got my time and fun and everything I hope to provide for you. I've got a presentation ready for you all that I can share my screen if that's all right. And
absolutely. We're hoping you can share your screen. We're hoping it's more of a relaxed setting because I will be getting an education today.
okay.
Myself, not necessarily for the other attendees here, but welcome and proceed. You can take hold of the screen.
All right. Can you see this first slide?
Yes, I can, but I would appreciate if there's anything you could do to make it just a little bit larger.
I am not. This is my full screen, so I don't think I can make it any larger.
No worries. It's I could handle it on my end. There you go.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, in that case, I will jump right in. So I mentioned I am with the Capital Planning and Support team at City Planning. We handle a whole host of different work streams on our team. One of which is our citywide needs and facilities work stream, where we manage a number of different charter mandated processes that typically happen on a routine basis. The community district needs and community board budget request process is one of those that is a routine charter mandate that we are engaged in and help facilitate. And so tonight's presentation is going to go over an overview of how that process works throughout the calendar year, as well as the role of DCP and the community boards in that process, some support offerings that we offer every year for boards to assist in submissions, so on and so forth. So I'll dive in. So I mentioned we'll start with the process overview. I'm then going to break apart the submission into two parts: the district need statements and the budget requests, and I'll go through each of those one at a time. We'll do a quick reference to the submission site itself. I think I can pulled up a demo if we wanted to take a look at it. Otherwise, I can save that for the end if we have time. And then a section on the resources available for boards.
Excellent.
So jumping into
you can jump in, and if you're able to do a demo, that's even better. Is that okay with you, Stacey?
Yes, perfect. I would also ask him if he could send us like a link to this after.
Oh,
No,
Oh
email.
yeah,
presentation, yeah.
yep, I will send the slides.
Oh,
Absolutely,
yeah, that would be awesome. Thank you, Nick.
Thank
no
you.
problem. Okay, so overview of the process. So, community district needs, as we like to frame it, is the city's oldest community budgeting process. There's a number of different ways that the city has to approach things like that, and CD needs, as we like to refer to it, has been around for decades now. DCP's role here, which I'll touch on a little bit more later, is really as a facilitator and as a support for the boards who are actually completing these district need statements. And our goals in supporting you are to ensure that this process is valuable for both the boards and the agencies engaged in it, to improve the trust and dialogue between boards and agencies participating. We want to make sure that all the information we collect from community boards about their needs and their district priorities are then used to inform the planning and outreach and budgeting that goes on across the city's various agencies. And we want to make sure that those community perspectives are being considered through a number of different lenses, kind of throughout the planning work we do and that happens at our sister agencies. And ultimately, we want to make sure that this is, at the end of the day, a community board driven neighborhood planning process. And so that's really at the core of our goals here. So I mentioned the neighborhood planning process, and I like to make this distinction because community district needs serves a couple of different purposes. And I think it's nice to kind of highlight how each of these two purposes sort of fit together. So on one hand, CD needs is a planning process. It's a process through which community boards every year take stock of their district's priorities, of their district's top needs, and then inform the city writ large, especially staff of city agencies, about what those needs are directly from the board's perspective. And so that's an incredibly valuable advocacy tool. It's an incredibly valuable informational tool for those of us at city agencies that use this data in our work. And then on the flip side, we also have the budgeting side of things. And so in addition to the needs perspectives that are being shared, there are also, of course, the community board budget requests that are more of a direct line item to agencies requesting particular things be done to accommodate some of those needs. I make this distinction especially because I think a lot of the times folks can get myself included, very caught up on the budget side of things. It's certainly the thing that draws the most attention because those budget requests are so tangible things that you're looking for in your community. And I just want to make sure that we take time to appreciate that this process does bring a lot of value as a planning process itself as well. So this process, to get a bit more into the details, is actually the combination of two different charter mandates. So every year, the community boards are charter mandated to submit a statement of their district's needs, as well as a list of their community board budget priorities, which now have sort of taken the form of community board budget requests. And so similar to that planning process and that budgeting process working together, these two different charter mandates we've sort of combined into one process so that district needs package, the district needs statement and the budget requests can together serve this kind of greater purpose, allowing the board to advocate for their needs, telling the story of the community and its various challenges and priorities, while also allowing for that more direct line of communication directly to the city agencies. So a bit of two halves combined into a whole in that regard. So every year, these submissions come in and they are made up of a number of different components. And I lay these out here because we are going to walk through the submission components sort of in this order, step by step. And it's the same order that if you were to read through one of your district needs statements, the report itself follows this order where you start at the top, give an overview of the district, then the top 3 pressing issues in the district, and you get sort of increasingly specific as you dive into particular needs as you go through the report, eventually leading to the budget requests. So we're collecting that same body of information from all 59 boards every year, and it follows this sort of general timeline I've got on the right side of the slide here, where in May we reach out usually as our first point of contact to say, hey, friends at the community boards, we're going to be opening up the submission form soon. Get ready get ready for that. We usually open the form in June, and I'm planning on sending out the access links to that next week per that timeline. Then following the recess that many boards take in the summer, OMB hosts borough budget consultations in sort of a ramp up to the start of a new budget process. And then the deadline for district need submissions every year falls round about Halloween, before eventually the agencies respond to budget requests and everything gets published in the preliminary budget in January, and we sort of start the cycle all over. What's not shown in this timeline is that during those months between January and May, our team takes all of that information that we've heard from the boards over that past year's cycle and goes around to usually 30 different agency offices around the city to share out, here's what we heard from the boards about issues related to your agency's work or your agency's borough office's work, whatever the case may be. So even in that kind of quote unquote off season, our team is still hard at work making sure that all of the needs that are shared in those statements are amplified to the agency staff that use that data. So to break things down into those into those finer parts, we'll start with the district need statements, those narratives that tell the story of a district's top priorities. And so this is really made up of three primary parts. We've got the top three pressing issues I alluded to a minute ago, which are sort of just what they sound like. It is my district's three most important items. You then move into most important issues by policy area. So there's 7 different policy areas, and that really allows the board to dive into more detail that maybe wasn't addressed in the top 3 issues. The top 3 issues are great sort of headline grabbers, and then the policy areas, you can then dive deeper into maybe things that didn't make the top 3 list or other, everyone's got more than 3 concerns, and so you want to make sure there's space to be able to talk about all of those. That tends to happen in the policy areas. And then the needs groups are actually part of each policy area. They're the most specific of the narratives, and we'll get to an example of that in a bit. So going one by one here, we'll start with the top 3 pressing issues. Hopefully you can see this, but again, I will send the deck afterwards. This is our chart of top 3 pressing issue selections across the whole city for the last year. And you can also see the numbers for the previous years as well at the end of each bar. And I shared this. This is one of our sort of favorite visuals to use for one of the higher levels of data we collect, is that boards are picking, all 59 boards are picking their top 3 issues, and we've got it color coded each bar here by borough, so we can see for each issue which boroughs are identifying these issues as top issues more frequently, where are there things changing between years. In general, these things don't change wildly between years. They're very big issues that don't necessarily get solved in the space of 12 months. But even still, when something does change, we're able to dive into the data and say, okay, that moved more than usual. Let's try to figure out why it was that moved. Let's talk to whatever agency maybe works on that issue, and we can start to unpack that. So very useful piece of data for us in the top 3 pressing issues. Here's an example. All of these top issue selections, the most important issues, all come with a written narrative to explain why it was that a certain thing got selected. And so here I've got an excerpt from a Brooklyn board back in 2020. One of their top 3 pressing issues was economic development and recovery. And you can see here in this excerpt that it was 2020. So they're talking about various issues related to the COVID-19 pandemic, various programs that were set up, opening streets to provide resources for people and cyclists, allow more space for restaurants and small businesses. So really giving a descriptive flavor to, in 2020, what does the situation with economic development and recovery look like in that board? So then we have the most important issue for each policy area. Here are the 7 policy areas. These are really just for organizational purposes in the context of district need statements. These don't apply anywhere else kind of in the budget process, but they are useful for our purposes to be able to sort of splice things up and talk about certain areas more specifically. So for instance, DCP, my agency, is located in the housing, economic development, and land use policy area. And so in that policy area, I'd be able to go in and see what each board's most important issue was, just related to those issues that DCP works most closely with. And when we share this information with other agencies, we're able to splice things up this way so that, if DOT wants to flip through everything that every board said about transportation, we don't need to make them flip through all the things that the board said about health and hospitals, in order to get that. We can just sort of splice that out for them. So here's an example of a Bronx community board back in fiscal year 2022, who identified that their most important issue in healthcare and human services was services for low-income and vulnerable New Yorkers. And this board did a really excellent job of, you can see I've bolded some items here in their excerpt, where they're giving really specific statistics about how, what the situation is related to health indicators in their community, particularly as it relates to lower income or more vulnerable New Yorkers. And so really excellent example here of a board that is doing some extra research to help bolster the narrative that they're sharing. And then finally, in the narrative section, we have the needs groups I talked about. So a needs group is a way that a board can make sure that they get around to all of the issues they want to talk about. So for instance, in healthcare and human services, you've picked your number one most pressing issue there, but maybe you've got other issues you want to discuss in healthcare and human services. So you've also got these subsections on the right here: healthcare and facilities, needs for older New Yorkers, needs for low-income New Yorkers, needs for the homeless. That you could go into greater detail in those more specific areas that maybe didn't get covered in one of the other sections you'd already written. So I'll pause here in case you have any questions about the narrative specifically before I jump into the budget request. Anything on the narratives you'd like me to expound on?
So Nicholas, thanks for that opportunity. Typically we'd save gallery for last, but what I'll do is quite a bit of information. So yes, we're gonna go with that. I want to be greedy and jumping firstly, but I'm going to open it up to the gallery and the folks. Remember, folks, if you do have a comment, concern, or something to share, we're going to keep it to 2 minutes. So I'll open it up right now if you have questions to Nicholas, and let's try to keep it concise so he can get through the presentation. Go ahead, Kay.
Hi, it's Kay Cardona. Good evening. Yeah, a couple of things like I have an issue with this phone that I'm not always able to email people. If they send me an email first, I can, respond to it. And I had the issue with the community board and stuff because I wanted to be a part of the district needs survey. But since you have everything displayed this evening, thank you. Yeah, so if you ask people that live here, like the community board members do, we do have a lot of pressing needs. We do have a lot of people in uncomfortable, intimate situations that would love to be able to afford a place of their own so they could get out of those relationships. We also have a lot of seniors like myself. I enjoy living on my own, but it's becoming increasingly difficult to live on my own. We do need decent senior housing in the communities where these seniors like myself are living. I live in, the CB 11 district, and I would like to stay in my district, as would at least 3 other seniors that I know that are struggling. So more senior housing. We have veterans. We have a lot of veterans that could use help with housing and other services. Other than that, this is a growing community with a lot of people that didn't live here previously that have chosen this community to be their home. I'd like to see them get more involved
30 seconds.
too. I'm sorry. I'd like to see them get more involved in what's going on, but I'm sure that they have ideas and stuff that they could share. So if your agency could reach out more to the public too, that would be great. Anyway, thank you so much for coming and doing the presentation.
Thank you for sharing. And Nicholas, I'll give you if you wanted to respond, and then I'll go after you.
I'll just quickly say I really appreciate that. Those comments, they absolutely express the type of needs that this process is meant to capture. And I'll talk later in the presentation about some of the ways that our team tries to assist boards in gathering that community input to put into their district needs statements. So I really think at the end of the day, a district needs statement that broadly and accurately reflects the real lived experience of the people in the district. That's the most effective district needs statement you can produce. Is one way that really tells the story of the folks that live in and have lived in the district. So I really appreciate you sharing that today. Glad to
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions from the gallery or Stacy? Okay. My question was a little bit more general. I noticed the bar graph, the bar chart
Mhm.
that you shared earlier, and I could see where the literal needs are. Not only, and you said it very well, that this kind of encapsulates the needs of most neighborhoods.
Mhm.
The question was, are your most important needs or policies aligned with, let's say, the top 10 of these identified categories? Are they in fact aligned, or are there no correlation at this point?
I would say it's there is definitely an overlap, but across 59 boards, there are a lot of different approaches that different boards take to how they frame their issues. And so in some cases, a board might pick three items as their most pressing issue, their top three pressing issues. And then when they get to a certain policy area, they might pick the same thing as the most important issue or something related to it to further expound. Others might say, I want to take this opportunity to talk about a separate but maybe somewhat related issue. And so I think generally there is a lot of alignment where the top issues do get the most attention throughout a board's report. But it really is up to the individual board, sort of how they choose to approach packaging all of that information.
No, thank you so much. I just wanted to know if from an end state perspective, if it made sense to align our needs with this bar chart, if it was in fact a priority and funded accordingly. So that's
Oh no, yes, I don't think I think that your best route is always to, like I said a minute ago, represent the district's sort of unique perspective as authentically as possible.
okay.
The real value I think in this process is that we get to hear directly from so many different boards every year who are, tasked with telling us kind of directly, our district is Bronx Community
Okay.
District 11. We have these particular issues. And so, yeah, there's not any sort of funding tied to what
Okay.
item gets ranked higher or lower. Yeah.
All right. With that being out, I see no other questions at this time. So please continue.
All right, so let's talk about the budget request then. So I mentioned we just got done talking about all the narrative stuff, the full written explanations. We'll move into the budget request now. So each budget request, and we collect a little over 3,800 of these a year from all boards to all agencies. So it's a pretty long list. And each of these individual budget requests, if you haven't seen one before, contains a couple of different bits of information. So I like to call this slide our anatomy of a budget request. Every budget request, the first thing you're going to learn is what type of request is it? Is it a capital request or an expense request? I'll talk a bit about in the next slides how we distinguish between those. But generally, capital requests, large investments. Expense requests are your operational budgets. Then you've got the request itself. What agency is it for? And an explanation of what exactly is being requested. And then finally, location. Is it a district-wide request? We're requesting something that our whole district needs, or is it site-specific, like a particular block that needs resurfacing, the pavement needs resurfacing, or something like that? So it could be one or the other. And so each request is going to include all of this information inside of it. So on that capital and expense requesting, a bit more info here. So identifying a capital request, these are generally going to be your large scale investments. They have longer lifespans. They're funded in the city's capital budget as opposed to the expense or operational budget every year. And so those capital requests are going to be things that typically cost more than $50,000 as a single purchase. Their lifespans more than 5 years. Expense requests, your head count, your salaries, things of that nature. So some good examples here of capital projects: physical infrastructure, transportation, sanitation, fire trucks, fleet vehicles for an agent that an agency uses to perform its duties would count as a capital investment, and technology infrastructure also counts as a capital investment. So those things we sort of set aside for those capital requests. The expense requests are, again, more the operations of the agency. Here's an example of a budget request from Bronx Community Board 7, actually, from a few years back. And this is a good example of a request where we can see here that Bronx 7, it's a capital request for the Parks Department. and they've given a really specific list of the items that they in Riverside Park want to see addressed. So a reconstruction of the bicycle and pedestrian path, installing new park security lighting, reconstructing sections of the existing riprap. And so what they've done really well here is if I'm someone at the Parks Department, I can look at this request and each of those items they're listing, I can go, okay, I know that costs about this much money, that costs about this much money, and I can start to make that evaluation of whether or not I think these things are doable in a given fiscal year. And so that level of specificity so that the person at the agency who's responding can sort of quickly put a dollar sign amount on something is going to help them make their sort of assessment of whether something is feasible in a given fiscal year or not. One potential room for improvement here is that some agencies would prefer that those requests are split into individuals so that they could say, yes, we can do the asphalt path, but no, we can't do the lighting. But that's a bit agency by agency in that regard. Here's an example of in the submission website what an individual request would look like. And so you'll see we've got the sort of policy area and need group and all of that categorical information. The request has a title, an explanation. When you're looking in the submission site, you can see a date stamp for when the request was created. And if it's a pre-existing request, you could also see the response the agency gave the previous year. Maybe there's something you want to update about it based on that agency response, things of that nature. So as whoever it is at the board who's doing their submission works through it, they'll be seeing the request presented kind of all in one rectangle. Some best practices for boards that we usually like to share out in writing your requests. Being as direct as possible is always good. Some agencies are receiving hundreds of requests from across the city. And so if a member of the agency reviewing requests can quickly, again, understand what is being asked, that makes it that much easier for them to understand right away, not have to sort of dig for what's being requested. Rationale, once you've said up at the top, we're requesting this thing, giving some additional rationale to connect it to a need is also very helpful for an agency to understand, they're asking for this thing and for this reason can also be useful. Details like location information is also very helpful for agencies that maybe have a lot of work across different geographies and are looking to understand where these requests are located in the city. That's location information can be very helpful. And then just keeping your list of requests refreshed. If you received any follow-up information from an agency, either in their response or in some communication with them outside of this process, making sure that the list of requests the next year is sort of up to date with the latest information is really useful. So after all of these budget requests are submitted, we collect all of them through our submission site. We hand them off to OMB. OMB then distributes them to the various agencies to collect those responses, and then OMB publishes them in the preliminary budget in January. So I include this just because there's a lot of sort of changing of hands going around, and it can be helpful to understand that we are here on the front end helping with the collection, and then OMB sort of takes it from there on the agency response side.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah, absolutely.
I apologize. Now, if you go back to that slide, you see where the community puts together their requests and it goes into this format to OMB. Mm-hmm. Is there a phase prior to issuance to the agencies to where we may get feedback and say, hey, listen, maybe your rationale is not strong enough, or maybe you didn't break it down in terms of scope? That way we could possibly fix the verbiage that needs to go, or to put our focus more in what could be met. Is there such a phase?
Yeah, I would say your two primary options there. One are the the borough budget consultations that OMB hosts in September. Generally, I've heard from boards that sometimes OMB is a bit reluctant to discuss individual boards' requests at those borough budget consultations, but questions like, is this program funded for the next fiscal year, or like, are there any programs you're expecting changes in funding for the next fiscal year? Those sorts of things can maybe help give you more of a detail on where you might want to tweak. The other option is that our team offers review of draft submissions. And so if
Okay.
you've worked up a first draft of your submission and want to work with us to review it before you click that final submit button, we
Yeah.
also are available to offer that.
And when, I'm sorry again, when would that would occur prior to, let's say, August, right? Because obviously,
Really, any time prior to the deadline, as early as you have the content ready, we're here all year round to pick up the phone and help out. So
I did
more
not
than
know.
happy to.
Thanks for
Yeah,
sharing.
absolutely. All right. So, a quick note on, and I heard you mention that you guys had gone through your preliminary budget in a previous meeting and talked about some of the responses you got. And so I wanted to unpack real quickly what the responses, what the agencies are thinking as they're responding at a high level. And so basically here, we worked with OMB to update this system a couple years ago to try to get a little more nuanced information out of the responses. What used to happen is that agencies used to log into OMB's system and they would select from this really long drop down list of possible answer options that they had given in the past. And it took a long time. Even if you knew what you were looking for, you would have to scroll for a really long time to find it. And you would end up with these sort of pre-canned responses that weren't necessarily all that helpful. And so what we in OMB worked to do was, how can we make it quicker on the agency's end so they can spend more time thinking about the request and less time scrolling? And how can
Right.
we make the response carry more information in it for the boards that are receiving the response? And so what we opted to do is now each agency for each request are asked these 4 yes or no questions, where do they understand the request? Has the request already been completed? Because if they don't understand it, or if they've done it already, that's sort of a different situation. And then assuming that they do understand it and that they have not done it already, then they'll answer, do they support the request and can they accommodate the need? And those 2 questions are kept separate very intentionally so that an agency could say, perhaps, we really like this idea, but we maybe can't help this year, but we want you to know we like the idea. Or the specific thing you asked for is not quite what we would recommend, but we think there's another way that we could help. And so it allows for some additional nuance there. And then I think the most important thing here is that when we updated this system with OMB 2 years ago, we made the written explanation a required field. And so agencies are now required to type in for every response a written explanation of why they gave the response they did. And
Okay.
so by answering these, you end up with these answer combinations that you probably saw abbreviated in your preliminary budget. So if you answered yes and yes to these second 2 questions, we like the idea and we can help. Yes, but no, we like the idea, but we can't help for some reason, so on and so forth. And so it allows them to, yes or no questions quicker to answer. And then you get these more specific outcomes importantly, with a written explanation tied to them to say, we really like the idea. We can't help this year, but we're applying for grant funding for this next fiscal year cycle. And, now there's more information in that response than you might have gotten in a previous year. So that's how the responses work. Submission site. I'll save us a little time here. Instead of clicking through a whole demo, I've got this little video I can click and play while I'm talking. So basically, the submission site is set up to look just like, or the same sections as the report itself. And so you've got the top 3 pressing issues, you've got each of the policy areas. Down below below where you can see on the screen right now are the budget requests. And so you just, as whoever it is at the board that makes the submission every year, will click on each section one at a time in whatever order they're working on them, enter that section, fill out whatever information they want to fill out in that section, and then click the save button, and they go back to that list where they started and pick the next section that they want to review. So I can skip ahead here to show at the end of that page, the save button. They can go to back to the home page, see that they completed the page that they just completed, and then they're able to scroll through the other sections, pick their top 3 issues, and scrolling through a little quick here, but we can always revisit this if you guys want.
It's very user friendly. I can tell you, being introduced to it for the first time last year, And of course, with the help of your team, it was very user-friendly process. But
That's
part
great
of
to
it,
hear.
yeah, I think that was huge in order to get participation. It has to be very friendly, and I commend your team for making that transition seamless. Now, prior to you going forward, Nicholas, just
Mhm.
going back to step three, I think you
Yeah.
made it was a great job in clarifying a CapEx project.
Mhm.
Um, I had a meeting, and in the meeting, a discussion came up, and someone in the meeting shared with us that one of our budget requests was incorrectly categorized as
Hmm.
needs or an expense, and I wasn't quite sure at the time how
Okay.
that would have been done, but I was hoping prior to going to step five if we could revisit step three and maybe give an example of what an expense budget would be.
Sure. Yeah. Let me go ahead and flip back. So I think, let's see, a quick example might be uh, HPD housing inspectors or a DOB building inspector. If you are asking one of those agencies to hire more inspectors so
Oh,
that they can perform more inspections, the salaries required to hire more individuals are part of the expense budget. That's part of the overhead operating costs of the agency, as opposed to something more, I'll say concrete, and I mean that somewhat literally. If you were asking the Department of Transportation to come and repave 2 blocks of a street that was in disrepair, that would be a capital request, costs a lot more money, takes a lot more time to make happen versus the expense request, which is really the day-to-day operations of the agency.
I think that was great. So if it's resource related, it's more expense.
Yeah, similarly, program funding.
Hmm.
So if you uh, maybe it's an after school program that the Department of
Hmm.
Youth and Community Development funds or administrates, that would also be an expense side thing because it's an ongoing expense that they're continuing to pay for as opposed to the community center where the after school program happens is a capital investment. You're putting a bunch of money to build this thing that's going to be there for a long time. The program that goes on inside is an expense thing because you're paying for the people that are going to show up and run the program.
Crystal clear. Thank you.
Amazing. Great. Okay. So our last section here is our resources for boards. So this is a huge part, really the biggest part of what our team does is that, the boards are the ones charter mandated to do this every year, but we recognize that, different boards have different, schedules and calendars and access to resources and people on staff and all that. And so we want to make sure that we can offer as much support as we can to make this a lighter lift for the boards that are participating. And so here's a brief overview, and I'll dig into each of these a little more of the sorts of things that we offer. So data resources, DCP hosts a ton of different data resources online that not only are available for you to use, but we can help you navigate if need be, if you're trying to do some extra research to bolster your narratives. Gathering public input, we will help you run a survey to gather public input from members of your community so that you don't have to do all of the survey collecting and counting up answers and things like that. Promotional materials, we can offer templates if you were to hand out flyers or want to share the link to the survey around or something. We've got some sort of pre-made templates that you can use for doing that. Analysis, I mentioned we'll review draft submissions. We'll also, we tend to do this with boards much earlier in the year, what we call a community board budget request walkthrough, where we will look through your whole list of requests and responses from the previous year, and then sit down with you for an hour and walk through kind of what we're seeing in your requests and responses, and leave you comments on, oh, we think this one could be updated, we think this one could, this and that. And so we offer that as well. And then, of course, training and tech support. Me being here tonight falls under that umbrella of training that, upon request, we are happy to find a way to help out however best suits you. One of those data resources, I'll jump into a couple of these more specifically. One of those data resources we're really excited about is this new capital projects portal. So DCP just created this brand new relatively recently. And it's a bit on the nitty gritty details side of things, but the reason I highlight it here is that it includes all of the capital requests that we collected last year that have a specific location are all mapped, which you can see in this image on the right. And so this is the first time that we or any other agency have put out sort of for the public to be able to scroll around and look across the city. Where are certain capital requests being made? What are agencies saying in response to them? And so we're hoping that not only is this really useful for other agencies, members of the public, whoever happens to be interested in searching through it. But we're also hoping it's useful just as shining an additional light on these needs that are being submitted, and sort of show in a more public venue. Look at here are where the budget requests are being made. Here's the agencies that are receiving them, and that can be something that folks can share around and point people towards to learn more about what those needs are and what agencies have said in response. Online search. Sorry, yeah.
That's amazing. And the fact that you run our analysis and we don't have to do it, I think it's a great resource.
I'm glad to hear it. Another example of analysis we will run for you is our online survey support. And so we've set up a survey. We used to run these more one-on-one for boards, and then we with the new technology that we use to host the submission form, we're now actually able to do it for the whole city. And so any board can take advantage of this. It's one survey link, the same link no matter where you live in the city, that you can share around. And anybody in the city can click on that link and fill out a quick survey to say, I live in this district in Bronx 11. My top 3 pressing issues in my district are X, Y, and Z. My most important issue in healthcare is whatever, and sort of fill out their own miniature district need statement. We then will collect all of those on the back end, filter out, here are just the responses for Bronx 11, and we'll send you all of that in a report so that you can get all of the input from the survey without having to bother with the hosting of it yourself. And so all it takes is for you to share the link around, and we'll send you updates on what folks are saying in response to the survey. So of course that's linked in here. So when you get the slides, you'll have that link. I can also follow up later to make sure you have the link to the survey as well. And then lastly, I mentioned the budget request walkthroughs, bespoke trainings. We've had folks ask for, we'd love a one-on-one just about budget requests, or just about our narratives or whatever the case may be. And so we can do sort of more specialized trainings, one-on-one tech support. We do a lot of as well. So if you're ever, I just need a refresher on the website on how to do the submission or whatnot, we're always available to set up time to discuss and do some one-on-one tech support. So really, if there's something related to your district need statement that you think of that would be useful for you in updating it every year, we are happy to look for a way to meet that need. So with that, I appreciate everybody's time. Happy to take any questions with whatever time you guys have left for me on your agenda. Appreciate it very much again for the invite and for the opportunity to come speak to you all tonight. So yeah, thank you again, and I'm happy to take more questions.
I think I should thank you. I think this presentation was well put together in order for it to be so effective, and it was timely. So without being greedy, I'm going to open up the gallery again to anyone that wants to share, comment, or have concerns. So Kay, is that your hand still up, or you have another question? If you're speaking, Kay, you're muted.
Sorry, my phone is a little uppity today. Beg your pardon. Yeah, I just wanted to thank him, Mr. Stamper, for this wonderful presentation. I had no idea, how involved the process is and how many of the agencies work together. And it's actually a good thing. Every community has its own particular issues and needs, but yet we're all one big community as the city of New York and stuff. So I think it's wonderful. And I also, there's something else I wanted to say, but I can't remember right now. But I just wanted to thank the board for having this meeting, this presentation. I just wish that more of our community would get involved, and be a part of the process. Anyway, I'll leave the floor to someone else. Thank you so much for letting me speak.
Thank you, Kay. And I wanna respond by saying we look forward to you sharing today's presentation to the rest of our community. And this committee looks forward to accepting your requests. You mentioned earlier the affordability. That's something we'd like to work with you on. So feel free to reach out to myself, Stacey Ann, or anyone else on the board, and we'll be willing to capture your needs. Anyone else, Stacey Ann, did you have any questions you wanted to share with us or concerns?
Thank you so much, Nicholas, for coming to the meeting. We really appreciate the fact that you came. What I wanted to know, what do you think are some of the reasons why these agency does not accommodate the requests sometime? Is it because I'm just wondering if it's because they already have, like, for example, the NYPD traffic enforcement. Is it because they already give a budget? The city council already has a budget for that department?
So it's certainly there are I'm sure folks at my sister agencies would tell you that there are as many answers as there are agencies in the city. But I think generally what we see is a bit of maybe two different sort of situations. On one hand, the agencies are receiving these requests around the same time that they're reaching out to OMB to say, we know a new budget cycle is going to start soon, and we want to tell you what our new needs are for that budget cycle. And so they're kind of in the same boat where they're also asking OMB to increase certain budgets here and there. And so in a lot of cases, we hear from agencies that they get a lot of ideas, and the amount of money they have to give to this or that particular request is not entirely up to them, and so they're going to do their best to, if they have money already that they can use on it, they'll try to find a way to make that happen. But otherwise, it might just be that the funding doesn't line up. In the other case, which I think is uh, mostly a maybe not mostly a parks issue, but parks is definitely the example we like to use the most,
Yeah.
is that some agencies have particular funding structures that just don't match up great with, getting yearly requests for new things. And so parks, we use the example because they do not have discretionary capital funding. So by that I mean, if you think of a great capital request for parks, you submit it to them. They might think this is the greatest idea we've ever heard, but they don't have a pot of money sitting there waiting to hand out to good new ideas that come in the door. They have to get those ideas, add them to their already long list of ideas they've heard from boards over the past years, and then go to council members, go to other elected officials, and start rallying for more funding to fund those. And so they do it a little bit kind of backwards in that sense. They get the idea and then they have to go look for the funding, as opposed to having the funding and then getting the idea. And so in that case, they maybe in a given year, if you take a snapshot of just 2026, they might not be able to say yes to a ton of things because the money isn't waiting to be spent, but they can put that on their list and over the course of a few years continue to work with the board, continue to work with the elected officials, and then if that same request is resubmitted, maybe in 2 years time, in 3 years time, it does get a yes that has sort of been in the works for a couple of years. And so that's actually something we're working with parks to do some research on, to see what that path looks like for a request to go from first showing up to eventually getting approved. And thankfully, we know that the Parks Department does some of the, in my opinion, some of the best work in the city with following up with community boards, with staying in contact with boards about their needs. Not just during this process, but outside of these requests as well. And we spoke with the folks in the Bronx Parks office recently, and they are really sort of exemplary folks as far as paying attention to and really caring about community parks concerns. So in spite of their lack of funding waiting to be spent, I think they try their best to make up for it in the open communication, in the long-term planning, in the cooperation that will hopefully eventually turn into those improvements getting realized.
And if I could expand on that, and I'll let you go again, Stacy Ann.
No, no, go ahead,
I
Dwayne.
had a member, whether incorrectly or not, stated that, how is it that my budget requests are never met? And I think that's a great explanation because it's not dependent upon us whether it gets approved or followed through. And these are some of the reasons. So thanks for that question, Stacy. And please go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
That was it. Thank you so much, Nick.
My pleasure.
Again, it's open to gallery. Anyone else that have questions, concerns, or anything to share?
One more question, sorry.
Sure.
The survey, the online survey. So
Yeah.
for example, someone put in a budget request. That goes straight to Department of Planning, and then we don't have to add that into our request, right?
No, so
Just
you would need to add that if they now granted the survey that members of the public would fill out is
yes.
more aligned to the needs narratives than it is to the budget requests.
Okay.
But yeah, you would need to then take what you learned from their survey response and put it into your submission. But
Okay.
let's say you had the survey got really popular, you got hundreds of folks or however many responding to it. The help there is that we'll do all of the counting up of you had 80% of your respondents said that this was the top issue and here's what they said about it and then we'll deliver that part to you so that you don't have to do all of the shuffling with all those responses.
Okay.
So
Thank you again.
what would be the next steps if we were to have a survey we'd like to share with our specific community? Would we have our very experienced staff here reach out to you and we tell them the parameters around the survey and it's handled from there and we set a time period and we get the data back? Is that how it would work?
So the survey is, I mentioned, so that we can do it for the whole city, it is just one survey, and then we sort of parse out for each board who responded for each district on the back end. So all you really need to do would be to, and I'm here, so I know that you guys sound interested, but someone on staff emails us to say we would really love to use the survey, take advantage of the survey this year. I send you the link. You can then put it in your email newsletter or put it up on a bulletin board or just hand out flyers or however you want to share it around. And then the next step is that I send you data as it comes in. I usually leave it open most of the year up until maybe even a little after the submission deadline, just to kind of capture as much as possible. And we'll send you data as it arrives.
Excellent. That's great. So
Thank you.
let me do a quick go around. Diana Finch, I want to make sure I didn't miss you. Did you have any concerns or anything to share today with us? And maybe Diana stepped away. I see, is that Fiona? Are you there, Fiona? Okay, moving along, I see Chelsea. Hi, Chelsea. Do you have anything you'd like to share? I want to make sure I didn't miss anyone.
Hello. Hi, my name is Chelsea. I'm here on behalf of George Alvarez. I actually did have a question, before we leave today. Are these surveys only open to community board members, or can I, as on behalf of George Alvarez, I do his communications, share this with constituents as well?
Yeah, so I'll make the distinct. Obviously, the district need statements themselves are products of the community board. The public survey that I was just talking about that I can share the link to, anybody in the city can take that survey and say, I'm a resident of Bronx Community Board 11, and I want my board to know that my top issues are so and so. So you can share that as far and wide as you want. The folks that you share it with can then share it, and we can catch them. Maybe they've got friends in a different district that are going to respond and pitch in for that district's survey responses. And so it is open and available for anybody who wants to take the survey.
Yeah, so Chelsea, feel free. again, you could coordinate with us or someone in the office would be excited to help you with that survey if you had an interest in that area. So please let us know.
That was a really good.
Thank you.
All right, so it's amazing you went through all that material in such a short time.
Yes.
So with that being said, again, I want to thank you and your team for your gracious professionalism. I'll never forget how you guys helped us transition our first year, so we're very grateful. We have grown over the year, and we're looking forward to continued growth, and I wanted to thank you for your time and for joining us this afternoon. So with that being said, thank you and have a good night to you and to everyone.
Thank you,
You
Nicholas.
too as well.
Thank you,
Thank you so
Nicola.
much.
So much.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank
Good night,
you.
everyone.
Good night.
That was very good.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, that was good.
It was very good.
Yes.
I'm very happy with
And thank you so much. I guess everyone got cut off, right?